And you're either going to stop and leave or you're going to get arrested.
I'm not going to stop and leave.
John,
He would like to trespass me from this property.
I'm asking him to leave. He's not. We're going to
He'd
take
like
him
to
into
trespass
custody.
me from public parking.
Are you a First Amendment?
The morning begins without urgency. A vehicle sits still. An engine idles. Breath fogs faintly in the winter air. There is no rush, no alarm, no visible threat. Just a pause between destinations, the kind that fills the empty minutes of an ordinary day. Then a shadow crosses the window. Not fast, not hesitant, certain. Authority does not announce itself with sirens here. It arrives quietly, already convinced it belongs. The first seconds matter. They always do. Not because of what is said, but because of what is assumed. A decision has already been made before words are exchanged. The posture says it. The spacing. The way distance collapses without permission. This is not curiosity. This is inspection. The camera captures a stillness that feels temporary, like a held breath. The person inside the vehicle remains seated, hands visible, voice controlled. He does not perform fear. He does not perform compliance either. He waits, expecting explanation. None comes. Instead, the request arrives backward. Not framed as a question, not grounded in cause. A demand without context, a test disguised as routine. The refusal is calm, almost polite. It is not defiance in volume or gesture. It is defiance in stillness. And that, more than shouting ever could, disrupts the rhythm authority expects. Silence becomes friction. Around them, the space begins to shrink. One presence becomes two, then three. The air changes, not louder, but heavier. Each arrival removes an option. Each uniform narrows the exit. This is how escalation works when it does not want to look like escalation. No one is in danger yet, but control is already being negotiated. And control, once challenged, does not retreat easily. The conversation circles, not toward resolution but toward repetition. The same request, the same refusal. Each loop tightens the frame. What could have ended with a wave and a step back now requires witnesses. There is a moment when reason could still interrupt momentum. It passes quietly. No one marks it. Instead, authority redefines the setting. What was open becomes restricted. What was allowed becomes conditional. The language shifts subtly, not to clarify but to corner. Words are used to reduce space rather than explain it. The person inside the vehicle points out what is missing. Signs, barriers, warnings. The absence is obvious. That absence is ignored. Because this is no longer about the space. It is about who gets to decide what the space means. A card is offered. A name is given. Formality appears, late and performative. It does not soften anything. It sharpens it. Rank enters the frame, not to stabilize, but to assert weight. The presence of rank signals something else too. This will not be resolved quietly. Backup arrives without urgency, but not without purpose. Their arrival is not reactive. It is confirmatory. Each new figure does not ask what is happening. They already know what role they are there to play. The person inside the vehicle remains where he is. He speaks carefully now, not louder, slower. He understands something has shifted, even if the rules have not been named. Authority begins to narrate reality aloud, not describing what is happening, but declaring what will happen next. Options are offered, but only one is acceptable. The other is consequence. This is the pivot, not the arrest. Not the search. The pivot is the narrowing of choice. Leave or else. The threat is framed as inevitability, not decision, as if the outcome exists independently of the people enforcing it, as if compliance is the only variable left. The refusal comes again. Still calm, still seated, still nonviolent. It lands heavier this time. Because now, refusal is not just disagreement, it is challenge. A hand reaches toward equipment. A camera angle changes. Something disappears that was meant to remain. Transparency leaves the room quietly, without announcement. From here on, the tone hardens, the language compresses, commands replace conversation. The distance closes. The door opens. That sound changes everything. It is not loud, it does not echo, but it marks the end of negotiation. From this point forward, every movement will be interpreted as resistance, every word as obstruction. The body moves before the mind can catch up. Hands grip. Balance breaks. The ground comes closer. What happens next is fast, but not chaotic. It is practiced. It is procedural. It does not look like anger. It looks like routine, and that is what makes it dangerous. The vehicle is no longer a boundary. The public space no longer matters. The issue is no longer presence. It is obedience. Inside the frame, control has fully transferred, not because of violence yet, but because the ability to refuse has been physically removed. There is a brief moment where restraint could still be replaced with release. It does not come. Instead, the search begins. Time stretches strangely after that. Minutes feel longer. The cold presses in. The seat is unforgiving. The sense of waiting returns, but now it is different. Now it is enforced. No explanation is offered that resolves anything. No charge clarifies the purpose. The silence that follows is not calm. It is punitive. Outside, life continues. Cars pass. People move through their routines unaware. Inside, options continue to disappear. This is how authority misuse rarely announces itself. Not with shouting, not with spectacle, but with small compounding decisions that close doors one by one until only one outcome remains. By the time the vehicle moves again, the story has already been written, and the cost will not be immediate. It never is. The passage of time inside a confined space is deceptive. Minutes accumulate without markers. The cold seeps through fabric and posture. The weight of restraint is not just physical. It is psychological. Not knowing what comes next erodes certainty faster than fear ever could. No charges are explained, none need to be. Explanation would suggest accountability. Silence, instead, asserts dominance. The vehicle becomes a holding room, not a transport yet, not a release. Just a place where control can settle into the body. Outside, authority confers with itself. The conversation is muted. Gestures replace words. Decisions are made off camera, or half on, their edges blurred. Whatever doubts exist do not surface here. They are absorbed into group consensus. Group consensus is powerful. It distributes responsibility until no one feels fully accountable. Each participant becomes a fraction of the action. Enough to act, not enough to answer. Inside the vehicle, the man sits upright. His posture is deliberate. He is not collapsing inward. He is preserving something, dignity perhaps, or evidence. The weight stretches. Eventually, the door opens again. Not to release, but to move the situation forward without resolving it. The language remains clipped, functional. No room for negotiation now. That phase has passed. What follows is administrative in appearance, paperwork, procedures, timestamps. But beneath it, something else takes shape. Justification after the fact. Once force has been used, the narrative must catch up to the action. Reasons are assembled, labels applied, events reframed. This is where power often hides. Not in the moment of contact, but in the story told afterward. The search becomes part of that story. not as discovery but as validation. Finding something is less important than looking for it. The act itself implies suspicion was warranted all along. Inside the frame, an object appears where it should not. Its placement raises questions that will never be answered in the moment. Only later, in quiet rooms, by people not present here. The damage is already done. Time continues to pass. The vehicle remains closed. The man remains seated. His voice, when heard, is measured. He does not plead. He states. He documents verbally, knowing memory can be contested. Authority responds with impatience now. The earlier performance of professionalism has thinned. What remains is irritation, not explosive, controlled but unmistakable. Eventually, release comes not as acknowledgement of error, but as dismissal. The situation does not end because it was wrong. It ends because it has gone far enough. No apology follows, none is expected. The aftermath begins quietly. A complaint is filed, words are chosen carefully, dates recorded. The language becomes formal, distant. The emotion of the moment is stripped away, replaced with categories. The response is predictable. Confidentiality, internal review, no visible consequence. This is where many stories end, not with resolution but with exhaustion. But this one continues. Legal action reframes the encounter, not as misunderstanding but as violation. The same events are replayed, now slowed down, dissected. The silence is filled with analysis. The absence of cause becomes central. Behind closed doors, decisions are made again. This time about risk, about cost, about exposure. A settlement appears without ceremony, no admission, no statement, just a number attached to closure. The system absorbs the impact. The individuals involved remain unnamed in consequence. The structure remains intact. For the man in the vehicle, the experience lingers. Not as spectacle, but as recalibration. A lesson learned about how quickly normalcy can collapse. For everyone else, the footage becomes another data point. Another example, another reminder. What makes this moment endure is not its uniqueness, it is its familiarity. A public space redefined without warning. Suspicion assigned without cause. Compliance demanded without justification. Force applied without necessity. Each element alone might be dismissed. Together, they form a pattern. And patterns are harder to ignore. Years later, the place looks the same. The pavement has not changed. The buildings remain where they were. No marker indicates what happened here. No plaque, no sign. That absence is telling. Encounters like this rarely alter landscapes. They alter trust. Trust erodes quietly. It does not shatter all at once. It thins. Each incident removes a layer until what remains is brittle. The people tasked with enforcing order rely on that trust, even when they do not acknowledge it. Without it, authority becomes force. And force is expensive. The cost is not just financial, it is social, psychological, cumulative. Those who watch this footage later notice the same details. The calm refusal. The escalation without explanation. The moment transparency disappears. The way options narrow until none remain. They recognize it not because it is extreme, but because it is ordinary. That is what unsettles. This is not a story of chaos. It is a story of procedure misapplied, of discretion hardened into certainty, of power exercised without reflection. The individuals involved may move on. Careers continue, shifts end, reports are filed, but the record remains. In that record, authority is not monstrous, it is human, and that is precisely the risk. Human certainty, unchecked, becomes justification. The man at the center of this did not seek confrontation, he did not provoke. He occupied space he was allowed to occupy. He declined a request he was not required to honor. For that, his day was taken from him, his autonomy interrupted, his body restrained. No grand lesson is announced, none needs to be. The footage speaks in pauses, in glances, in the absence of explanation. It shows how quickly the balance between citizen and state can tip, not through malice but through momentum. Once momentum builds, stopping it requires intention. Intention was absent here. The settlement closes the case, the file is archived, the footage circulates, viewers bring their own experiences to it. Some see themselves in the seat, others in the uniform. Most recognize the tension. This recognition is uncomfortable. It asks nothing directly, it simply remains. And that may be its greatest consequence, not outrage, not resolution, but awareness that control, once challenged, reveals itself. Quietly, inevitably.